Hi, my name is Dr. Ryan Arthur. This video will explain how to write the conclusion and recommendation sections of your dissertation. Once again, we will cover both sections because they are interrelated. The first paragraph of your conclusion is a summary of your central findings. You can do this by explaining what you found from your central aim. What did your central aim reveal? Then summarize your findings from your first objective. Then summarize your findings from your second objective. Then summarize your findings from your third objective. And if you have a fourth objective, summarize the findings. The next area in the conclusion section is the critical reflection on your findings. Imagine you have reached the top of the mountain. You have read many studies. You have answered your aim and all of your objectives. Now you can put forward a scholarly opinion. You have earned that right. Bring all of your key points together. Tie all of your objectives and your readings together and put forward a viewpoint. Put forward a unique view. Put forward a scholarly view. I have here some examples. You can choose one of these examples that best reflects your findings. The central issue is explain why. You can argue that your research has led you to identify the central issue. For instance, you found that the central issue of child obesity is poverty. It is not diet, it is not genes, it is not location. Though these matters have some impact, the central issue is poverty. Unless poverty is tackled, childhood obesity will continue to be problematic. So think about the central issue in your study. Though some factors may have some impact, you identify the central cause that underpins everything. Other researchers and policymakers need to focus on this central issue. Or, it looks bleak. Explain why. You can argue that your research has led you to see the future looks bleak. You can explain why nothing is being done to change the situation, so problems will remain. There is no planned legislation, there is no real awareness, there is no change to the prevalence, there is nothing on the horizon. Or, the future is promising. Explain why. You can argue that your research has led you to see that the future looks promising. You can explain why the future looks promising. Perhaps you observed the setting up of government committees addressing the issue, planned legislation, increased awareness, things are moving in the right direction. What has caused such a promising future? Or, the study has laid bare the lack of interest in this topic. Explain why. Your research has uncovered that there is a lack of interest or awareness. There is a lack of concern. Postulate some reasons why there is such a lack of interest in this plight. What is the consequence of this lack of interest? Or, the problem has been underestimated. Explain why. Your research has revealed that the real extent of the problem or the issue is largely unknown. Or maybe the focus is on one particular aspect, whereas you have identified a more problematic aspect that has not been widely discussed. Why is this so? Why has this not been uncovered? Or the problem has been exaggerated. Explain why. Your research revealed that the problem or issue has been overstated, embellished, amplified. Perhaps you found that there are a number of factors that prevent the problem from being as challenging as some would have us believe. Or there are more troubling matters that we need to focus on. Or maybe the problem has been over-theorized. We cannot see much of its impact in the real world. Explain why the problem has been overstated. Or the issue is the system, not the individuals. Explain why. Your research revealed that even though individuals have been labeled and stigmatized, the real issue is the system. It is systemic. We should not focus on the individuals. Instead, we should focus on the systems. Or a growing ethical dilemma. Explain why. Your research reveals a crossroads. In order to progress, an ethical choice has to be made by society. We can no longer put our heads in the sand. We can either go down one path or go down another path. The next section, you should state the limitations of your study. and how you mitigated these limitations. Here are some possible limitations. My research question was too vast. Why was this a problem for you? My research question was too restrictive. Why was this a problem for you? The geographical area of my study was too vast. Why was this a problem for you? The geographical area of my study was too limited. Why was this a problem for you? I did not include enough information on the variations in gender, age, race, class, disability. Why was this the case? The next section, you should state the strengths of your study. What is special or unique about your study? What is the value of your study? In this section, blow your trumpet. Explain why your study is important. Explain why your study is significant. Who could benefit from this study? Are there policymakers, organizations, professionals, or professional bodies that could benefit from your study? Can your study improve or transform practice in a certain industry? Towards the end of your conclusion, you should make some recommendations. It is always good to end your dissertation with recommendations. The present situation is problematic, or it can be improved, so you offer recommendations to improve outcomes in the near future. 2 or 3 recommendations are sufficient. Quality over quantity. Recommendations should be tied to problems that you have mentioned throughout your study. Every recommendation should be linked to issues that you have explicitly discussed in previous sections. A good way to do this is to restate your problem. Show how your recommendation will solve this problem. Every action that you recommend should be practical and achievable. Be very conservative. Do not make your recommendations too elaborate. You do not have to make up recommendations. You can borrow recommendations from the literature. You can borrow recommendations from government reports, NGO reports, PhD studies, academic studies. Make sure you reference where you borrowed your recommendations from. This is the best way to make your recommendations because your recommendations will now be referenced. This will strengthen your recommendations. If it is possible, point to an actual example of your recommendation in action. Is there somewhere in the real world that your recommendation is being implemented? If so, this is great. Highlight this real world example. It is always good to give flesh and bones to your ideas. There are 4 types of recommendations. Number 1, the academic recommendation. This is where you write if more research is needed. If you found it difficult to find information, this is the recommendation for you. Number 2, the policy recommendation. This is where you indicate that an act of parliament or policy or codes of conduct are needed. If your study revealed that there was an area that you felt that legislation, policy, or a code of conduct did not cover, this is the recommendation for you. Also, your study may have revealed that this area has been covered, but firmer legislation, firmer policy, or firmer codes of conduct are needed. Number 3, the practitioner recommendation. This is where you indicate an intervention is needed to improve the practice of an occupational or professional group. Your study may have revealed that organizational psychologists need to consider their actions in a particular area. Number 4, the education and training recommendation. This is where you recommend education or training for a particular sector. For example, managers need to be trained in a particular area. Did you find that organizations were not considering certain matters? Do you feel that care will be improved by an increase in knowledge? Do you feel that access will be enhanced by an increase of knowledge? Do you feel that barriers will be diminished by an increase of knowledge? If so, this type of recommendation is for you. Thank you for listening. Please like and subscribe. Any comments, please put them in the comments section.